What up, though? Back at you with another book review. Hit that like and subscribe and give me some comments. Today I'll be reviewing Heat Part 2. Check me out. Heat Part 2, published in 2022. It is the collaboration between Michael Mann and Meg Gardiner. It's his only book to my knowledge, and she has written several books and she specializes in crime thrillers. It is the follow up to Mann's hit 1995 movie Heat, starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. It tells the story of Chris Shirless, who was portrayed by the late great Val Kilmer in the movie. Not only is it a sequel, but it's also a prequel of sorts. And it is a very detailed crime thrilling novel that gives us fans a better understanding of many of the characters from the movie. Now, forgive me for using these people's real names. It's just that while you're reading the book, you just can't help but picture Al Pacino when you hear the name Vincent Hanna or the dialogue of Neil McCauley. You just can't help but hearing Robert De Niro, along with all the other characters. All the characters come back in this book. So here we go. The book begins with a prologue, which is a recap of the end of the movie. And then it cuts to part one, where Chris, who is played by Val Kilmer, goes to see Charlene, who is played by Ashley Judd. She waves him off, signaling to him that she has been compromised, and then he turns and leaves. Chris has to go back to see Nate after this, who is played by John Voight. Um, he informs Chris he has to give him a new out, and then he informs him that De Niro has been killed. Then it cuts to Pacino and Detective Drucker, who was portrayed by McAlty Williamson. That was Bubba Gump in Forrest Gump. They are in De Niro's house. Remember the house where he was overlooking the city and all that? So they end up there, where they find the book that De Niro had bought from the bookstore where he met Edie 3 weeks earlier. They find a receipt in the book, and that leads them to her. So they track her down, and Pacino realizes this the same girl that was with De Niro at the hotel. And if you remember from the movie, De Niro's about to go. He's talking to Nate, and Nate gives him a new out. And De Niro makes the fatal decision to go tie up those couple loose ends with Van Zant and Wayne Grow, which, if you, when you read the book, you realize that I thought it was two names, Wayne and then Grow. It's really his last name is Wayne Grow. But he has her with him when he does this. And so she sees Nate and the bar that they were at. It was, I think it was the Blue Room was the name of the bar. So when they talk to Edie, she tells him about the Blue Room and Nate, which leads them to Nate. And so in the book, you get to see how deep Nate is in the game. And he's got his hands and his ears are everywhere. And so while that's going on, you you see Chris being going to Mexico, and Nate has set him up to be smuggled out of the country. And then the book cuts to part two, which goes all the way back to 1988. So we see how Chris meets Charlene in a Las Vegas casino where she is a prostitute. And it tells their little whirlwind romance until he gets the call to come to Chicago from De Niro, who is with Michael Sharito, who was played by the late Tom Sizemore. Now, they're getting ready for the next job. And it is also here where we're introduced to the villain of the book, Otis Wardell. So Wardell, he has his own crew. But they do high-end home invasions. But while they're doing them, they're very brutal. They choose to rob the people while they're home. That's just their MO. You know, while they want to take the guy, the husband or the boyfriend, whatever, and they beat him up, and then they brutalize the wife or the girlfriend or the daughter in front of them. It's just what they do. crazy. And the two crews use the same vehicle guy. His name is Grimes. He gives them, supplies them with whatever vehicles they need, getaway vehicles or whatever they're using. Now, De Niro is unaware of the Wardell guy. He has no time to be wasting with all them. He in and out. But Grimes keeps running off at the mouth to Wardell and them. He's telling them, this guy, De Niro and them, they ain't got time to, y'all just home invaders. De Niro and them, they be doing $1 million heists. He the man. He really the man, which this makes Wardell envious of De Niro. So cut to now De Niro and them, they're doing the job. They're going to break into a bank. And unlike the movie, this time they're going to break into the bank while it's closed. And so they accomplish this and they get away with millions. And they only target safe deposit boxes, cash and jewelry. And in this case, some floppy disks. Now, this is in the 80s, and they know that some of these disks may contain information that they can use to blackmail people. The heist goes off perfectly, and they get away. So all of this goes perfectly, and they get away. They divvy up the money, and they all head back to L.A. Now, while this is going on, Pacino and his team are also in Chicago at the time, just like in the movie said that he was in Chicago. Him and the detectives, what was his name? Castles and Bosco, and all of them are in the book too. And they are hot on the trail of Wardell's crew because they've been doing these home invasions for a while. And in the last one, they killed the homeowner, the guy, and they raped the wife and the daughter. So Pacino and him, everybody's younger at this stage in the book. And so he's a pill popping, Adderall, taking cocaine, sniffing, drinking liquor, and dealing with prostitutes. He's jumping on top of roofs of cars and throwing people off the top of buildings. Pacino wild in 1988. And so they get a tip as to where Wardell and his crew's next invasion is going to be. And so they get there and a big shootout happens, but Wardell gets away. So now back in LA, De Niro and crew, they're trying to set up the next job. But before that, they take those floppy disks to Kelso. Now, if you remember the movie, Kelso's the guy in the wheelchair. He's the one that sets up and tells them how they're gonna get past the security systems and all of that, and the blueprints to the buildings and all of that. So they give him the floppy disks, and he finds out that these disks belong to the Mexican drug cartel. They're connected in Chicago. And on the disks are basically everything about their business. How much money they're making, and the routes that they take, and the exact places where they keep the money and the drugs in these safe houses. So now De Niro decides that they're going to hit the Mexican drug cartel. And being the thorough professional that he is, he decides to go back to Chicago so he can surveil every step of the operation. And he wants to trail them from Chicago to Mexico. So he goes back to see his car guy, Grimes, and he gets an 18-wheeler from him. Not only because he thinks he's going to need it during the job, but he also wants to look inconspicuous as he drives cross country. So De Niro gets the 18-wheeler, and he also needs some other getaway cars for the job. And so he has them all in the back of the truck. And as he's about to leave, Wardell shows up, and he's on the run from Pacino. But he shows up at the garage, and he wants to know where De Niro is going with this 18-wheeler, because he knows there's about to be something going on with $1 million. And so he tortures Grimes into telling him everything he knows, which isn't much, but he does know that De Niro is on his way to Mexico. Cut to part 3 of the book. It goes into 1995 after the end of the movie. and it takes place over a year from 95 to 96. And this is where the book slows down dramatically. It was a tough 65 pages to get through. If you're a fan of the movie, you'll do it. But it picks up with Chris touching down in Mexico. And he's still recovering from the wounds. Like I said, it takes place right after after the movie, and he's smuggled into Mexico, and he gets there, and over the course of months he has to recuperate. Nate sets him up with a family uh, that he's known for years, and they get Chris back together. Now, this family are dedicated to trading stolen and counterfeit merchandise. And their really high end stuff that they deal with is trafficking military grade electronic warfare technology. Now, you can tell that either Michael Mann or Meg Gardiner or both of them have a lot of technical knowledge in this area, because it can go on and on and on with terminology of the equipment and computer terms that at times can be quite boring. So after a year of recuperation, Chris gets back on his feet and he begins doing security slash bodyguard details for the family. And he also meets the daughter of the family's leader, and they begin a secret romance. Together, they help transition the syndicate into a more modern weaponry, dark web trade situation. Again, that is the part of the book that kind of drags along. But after that, it picks up. That's the halfway point of the book. We now go to part 4, which takes us back to the US-Mexican border in 1988. De Niro and crew are preparing to pull off the robbery at the Stash House. Danny Trejo comes back in this part of the book. We also meet De Niro's love interest. She's a part of his crew, and he is like a father figure to her daughter. Just like the movie, there's a big build up to the heist. It doesn't go as planned because they have to shoot their way out of it, but they do pull it off and get away. One problem: Otis Wardell. He manages to intercept De Niro's take of the heist. I'm not going to tell you how he does it or what he does to do it, but it sets De Niro off, and now he's got Pacino and De Niro after him. Now we get to the book's end, and it cuts to 2000, 5 years after the end of the movie. Chris is back in LA to tie up some loose ends with Charlene. He has to make a choice between her and his new love. He also is there to avenge De Niro and once and for all settle the score with Pacino. Otis Wardell is also in LA, and he has reinvented himself with the money that he stole from De Niro 12 years earlier. He draws the attention of Pacino because of a homicide that has his pattern written all over it. I'm going to leave the book review there. I think I've given away too much as is. That being said, it was a worthwhile read, especially if you are a big fan of the movie. We still get the discipline of De Niro plus the obsession of Pacino. The movie didn't have a clear-cut villain, but the book has a psychopath. It dragged along at times, but hey, this was heat. Join me next time when I'll be reviewing Chuck Palahniuk's Lullaby.